and one is abnormal. So if I ask you which is abnormal, you can see here that on the right side there is a hyperkeratotic white line. So this hyperkeratotic white line is different from this particular white line which is there. So this line is a linea alba which is present at the occlusal plane level. When the patient has got cheek biting habit, it develops this, and when you stretch the mucosa, it will disappear. Whereas here it is a hyperkeratotic white line, and that is a so that hyperkeratotic white line is what we call is a lichen planus, linear type of a lichen planus. Okay. Linea alba and lichen planus. Then we'll see first this lecture I will try to divide it into few parts. That is the normal and abnormal variation. Then there will be swellings. Then there will be ulcerative lesions, white lesions, and some miscellaneous lesions. So this, if you look at this left hand slide, there are yellowish granules are seen. And as everyone is already aware that these are called as the phorodysis granules, and it's a normal variation. Whereas here also it looks like phorodysis, but actually there is the erythematous patch. And in that erythematous erythroplakic patch, there are these white speck-like things which resemble the granule. So this is a very dangerous condition. This is called as a speckled leukoplakia, and this is a phorodysis granules. So this is the difference between normal and abnormal. On your right side, you have the tongue, which sometimes the patient looks at his tongue in the mirror and he sees some red leaf-like projections, and then he takes out his tongue, then it abrates against the lower 7 and 8, and it starts becoming painful. So he keeps on observing his tongue. So that is nothing but a foliate papillae. So this foliate papillae is normal appearance, and it may look red, and patient may get worried, and there is a cancerophobia he develops. But on the other hand, the right side, if you see, here you find is the ulcerative lesion, which is actually maybe a traumatic or maybe malignant also. So you have to differentiate between normal and the abnormal. Okay. So one is a foliate papillae and second is the ulcerative lesion. Always remember that you may get normal patients who complain of burning pain in the foliate papillae region. So you have to reassure them that this is nothing wrong with you. That is just a foliate papillae. Now, one is the abscess and one is the cellulitis. Which according to you, in your mind only you answer, which according to you is the abscess? The old man or a young boy? So obviously the answer will be the old man, because you can find that there is a pointed swelling and pus is started coming out from here, and it is localized collection of pus. And that is called as the abscess, and there is diffuse swelling and Brownie edema is seen in the cellulitis. Cellulitis is caused by organisms like Streptococcus, which releases enzymes which are like aldosterone and streptodarunase, streptokinase, which are spreading enzymes, and that is cellulitis. And here this abscess is caused by pyogenic organisms, and they liberate an enzyme called as coagulase, and that precipitates the proteins around the fibrin around the collection of pus, and that is the abscess. So abscess has to be drained, even cellulitis has to be drained, but these are the swell. Now we have, in short, we have come to the swelling. So this is the infectious swelling. Now of all the conditions which come to a general dentist, the most dangerous is the Ludwig's angina. That you must bear in mind. So if you see any time a patient who has got a swelling in the submandibular region, and the swelling extends from the right side to the left side, and you ask the patient to raise the tongue, and tongue is elevated, the floor of the mouth is elevated, so that is a very dangerous condition. That is called as a sublingual and submandibular space for the Ludwig's angina. In this case, the patient is obese, but actually this is the swelling in the submandibular region, and the tooth caries is lower 6 and 7, both are caries and periapical, and in his case the pus has already started draining from the sublingual area. So this is typical Ludwig's angina, and one has to be careful about the Ludwig's angina, and you have to not to try to treat it in the clinic. Better to send such patients to the general nursing home or to an oral surgeon who can manage them better, because it can be a surgical emergency. If you see a swelling which is smooth and well covered with mucosa and smooth shiny mucosa and which is mobile, then it is mostly benign, that is a fibroepithelial polyp. However, if you see a swelling which is like a Turkish towel like appearance, hair like projections are seen, then that is a verruca. Sometimes you come across a swelling which is a bony hard. When you palpate, it is bony hard, and if you take X-ray, you find that there is trabeculae are present and there is corticated bone is present. So this is nothing but osteoma. So this osteoma also may be present as a swelling. Now, this is a very unusual presentation, unusual condition. I hope you'll never see this type of a lesion. But on your right side, I will first cover this on the tongue. If you see, it is made up of small capillaries, and this is called as a varix. Made up of small capillaries, this is called as a varix. On the left side, there is pigmentation, pigmented lesion, and it is looking irregular. So there is a asymmetry is there, and then there is asymmetry and there is elevated lesion, and the pigmentation is there is varied. This is called as a varied. Here there is more pigmentation, there is less pigmentation. This is nothing but a malignant melanoma. So you should be very careful about this malignant melanoma, because it is very dangerous condition. It will spread very fast, and you have to earlier you diagnose, the better it is. But still the prognosis is very poor. So this is a case of a unusual case of a malignant melanoma. If I ask you that these are the two tongue lesions which are present from birth, that is called as hamartoma. One of them is hemangioma and another one is a lymphangioma. So which according to you is a hemangioma? Like that, if you ask yourself, then you look at this right side, you find that it is purplish bluish in color. So this one is having capillaries inside. So this is a hemangioma, and that which looks translucent, that must be the lymphangioma. So this is hemangioma and this is lymphangioma.
Sir, can I ask you a question, sir? I have one query just here. Sir, why it always happens that general dental practitioner, the lesion it becomes difficult for them to diagnose a lesion. Everything looks either red or white, and it becomes difficult, and they always are unable to diagnose it. And I see many a time they are referred to higher center for the diagnosis, but there is no definitive method by which we can diagnose it. So why this happens always?
I think when we start practice, in general practice, we are mainly concentrating on the tooth only. So whenever patient comes to us, we look at patient complaints of pain, and mostly the tooth is carious or tooth is mobile or something. So we concentrate on the tooth and we don't pay attention to the mucosa, tongue, floor of the mouth, then cheek, lips, etc. And because we don't pay attention, the normal as well as abnormalities are missed during our training period. So even if in oral medicine we are covering it in detail, but still that after the exam of oral medicine is over, when person enters into the general practice, they don't pay that much attention. So that is why this is happening.
So everything looks same, either red or white. That is what we are not nothing beyond red and white.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. But when I cover this ulcerative this thing, I will tell another method how to remember this condition. Yeah. So now we come to the vesicular lesions. So this is a dewdrop appearance. So if you look at the lower lip of this patient, you find that it looks like a drop of a dew. So this is called a herpetic vesicle. Now why it looks like a drop of a dew is because it is superficial intraepithelial. So superficial covering is very thin and it is translucent. So through that the fluid can be seen. So therefore it is called as a dewdrop appearance. And this is typical of a herpetic vesicle. So primary herpes is seen more commonly in the younger children. So it is a primary herpetic gingivitis. And what happens is these patients don't come to us. That is why we may miss it, because these are small children and they go to the pediatrist, pediatric doctor, and they will diagnose it and they will treat it. But sometimes they may come to the dentist. So dentist will see 3-4 things. First is that patient will have history of running nose, fever, malaise, etc. Means patient is not well. Prodromal symptoms. Vesicles are small, as I showed you, the blisters which are filled with fluid, and then they will rupture and then they will form ulcers. And sometimes because they are ruptured and they form the ulcer, there is tissue tags around it because vesicle is ruptured. So you can see here tissue tags around it, and then there is diffuse marginal gingivitis. So this diffuse marginal gingivitis, multiple vesicles, multiple ulcers which are superficial with tissue tags. This is typical of primary herpetic gingivitis. Mostly we don't try to give any antiviral drugs in this case because they are self-limiting. But this is one ulcerative lesion. So somebody said that Burkett says that lesion can be classified as either it is flat with the mucosa, or it is raised with compared to the mucosa, or it is depressed. If it is flat, it may be pigmentation or some discoloration. If it is depressed, it will be ulcerative or vesicular lesion, ulcerative lesion or erosions. If it is raised, then it could be the swellings which I showed you, some swellings like that. So that is how first you have to classify. Then you go to the classification. So now supposing if I ask the audience that if you take a ruler and make exactly half the face, half the tongue, the ulcers are present, and other half it looks totally normal. So what this condition is? So this is typical unilateral presentation of a herpes zoster. So herpes zoster typically presents like this. That patient, this is a young patient, otherwise it is more common in the older individuals. So patient develops red area, very severe pain, that is preherpetic neuralgia, very severe pain, unilateral pain. Then red patch appears, in that vesicles appear, the vesicles will rupture and they will weep serum and then they will crustate. So this is typical of a herpes zoster. So herpes zoster will look like this. So if you diagnose herpes zoster, the most important thing you have to remember is you have to start with acyclovir as early as possible. So the earlier we start the acyclovir, the better will be, because it stops the viral replication, and therefore acyclovir has to be started. And if it is involving the maxillary division or ophthalmic division, then it may give rise to ulcers in the eyes and it gives rise to blindness. So you have to start it very fast to prevent any complication. So acyclovir 800 milligram 5 times a day. 800, that is very high dose. 800 milligram 5 times a day you have to give the patient with the herpes zoster, and for 7 to 8 days, then immediately the pain comes under control. So that is what now they give valacyclovir and saquinavir. These are the new drugs which are given to prevent the post-herpetic neuralgia. That is a complication of herpes zoster is post-herpetic neuralgia. Now, if you look at this patient, the teeth look good. There is not much of calculus except gingival resection here. Materia alba is there in these areas. But what is noticeable is the redness. This is called as a desquamative gingivitis.
Okay. Sir, just again, after this desquamative gingivitis, is it some particular disease or any other? There are multiple diseases which can be categorized into the desquamative gingivitis, or it is some particular condition only?
Actually, what happens in desquamative, there are a number of causes of desquamative gingivitis. One of the cause is erosive lichen planus. Second cause is cicatricial pemphigoid or benign mucous membrane pemphigoid. Then in the post-menopausal women, this type of erosive lesions are seen, and pemphigus vulgaris. These are few conditions where desquamative gingivitis takes place. And what is noticed is part of the mucosa is normal, and then suddenly it appears as red in color. And if you do scaling in this patient or you do flap operation, it is not going to help, because what has happened is superficially the mucosa is torn off and the raw bleeding area is exposed. And anything that patient takes, suddenly he'll get burning sensation. So he cannot tolerate food, he cannot do brushing. So there is a lot of collection of materia alba and local factors, and it further gives rise to gingival and inflammation. So this is typical of erythema, this is typical of desquamative gingivitis. And if this desquamative red area has got a white area surrounding the erosion, white area surrounding the red area, then white lines like linear, like a striae, then it is erosive lichen planus. If it is not having striae, then you, of course, all the patients you ask whether they develop a blister before this appears. So sometimes the patient says that yes, he develops a fluid-filled blister that ruptures, and then it gives rise to this type of a lesion. In that case, it is more likely to be benign mucous membrane pemphigoid or cicatricial pemphigoid, and such patients may have ophthalmic lesions also. So this is one of the conditions. Desquamative gingivitis.
These lesions on the gingiva, I find they are very difficult to treat as compared to the buccal mucosa or leaf. Because when the mucosal application or intralesional injection, it becomes little difficult to treat. I have experience. So what is your opinion on that?
So what we should do is we take an impression of upper and lower arch and extend the impression right up to the sulcus, and then make a soft splint, that mouth guard, and keep a spacer and make it so that when you put the ointment, that ointment can be put inside that, and then patient wears it in the night, so that local action will be for a longer time. And we treat it mainly with the steroid, that is the betnesol, betamethasone 0.5 milligram 4 times a day to be dissolved in the mouth, and either the patient swallows it or spits out. First 5 days, 4 times like that. So that only the treatment which we can give. Some people have tried tacrolimus also, and other medications are there. So I will cover this treatment part after.
Yes, sir.
So
Sure,
this,
sure, sure,
so
sure.
this community gingivitis. Sometimes this patient gave history that she was having some fever or something, and she took antibiotic. And after taking the antibiotic, suddenly the mouth vesicles and bullous lesions, and they ruptured and they led to bleeding area. And on the skin also there were target-like lesions seen. So what is this condition? This condition is called as the erythema multiforme. Why it is called multiforme? Because in one patient you get vesicle, you get bullous lesion, you get ulcerative lesion, you get bloody crustaceans, all sorts of combination of lesions are seen, multiple forms of lesions are seen. Therefore, it is called as a multiforme, and this is typical allergic manifestation. And it will respond very well to the steroids. But the problem is that it may be mistaken for herpes. How to now? That is the question which you had asked. That it is very difficult to differentiate between various ulcerative lesions. So
Yeah, they look all same.
they will all look same. So here
Yeah.
this is ulcerative lesion, and the ulcerative lesion is seen also in herpes. So how to differentiate? So that big question mark is there. So now what happens is herpes lesion, herpetic patient will have prodromal symptom, whereas erythema multiforme, no prodromal. Herpes patient will be less than 6 years, 6 months to 6 years. This patient will be little older. This patient will give history of taking some medication. Herpes patient will not give such medication, history of medication. Then herpetic lesions will be smaller and small, round, symmetrical, shallow. They are small, round, symmetrical, shallow, SRSS, and erythema multiforme is large, irregular, deep, and bleeding. Why they bleed? Because the ulcer goes deeper into the connective tissue, and therefore it bleeds and it gives rise to bloody crustaceans as seen here. So that is typical of erythema multiforme. For the rule for the ulcer, if you say ulcerative lesion, no, then you think in your mind or you ask the patient whether these are coming again and again, how long they are there. If they are for shorter duration, then they are in the acute multiple group. If they are for a longer duration, chronic multiple group. If the patient says it keeps on getting again and again, then multiple group. So depending on that, you diagnose. So if it is acute multiple ulcers for a short duration, then erythema multiforme, herpes zoster, etc. This will come. Herpangina, this will come in that. If it is chronic, then it will be pemphigus vulgaris, pemphigoid, etc. If it is recurrent, then recurrent intraoral herpes, then recurrent aphthous stomatitis. So these are the way to. So this one condition is there. If you see the ulcer here, it is a single ulcer, but multiple ulcers also may be possible. This flat ulcer with erythema. Flat ulcer with erythema, extremely painful. Young patient, otherwise mouth is very healthy. So this is typical of aphthous, and patient will give history of recurrence. So it keeps on recurring again and again. And this is typical, and there is a papule. There is not a vesicle before. There is a papule which ruptures, and therefore no tissue tags are seen. So this is typical of aphthous. And if you see cluster of vesicles which rupture, that is a cluster of vesicles which are recurrent intraoral herpes, and that's and we used to teach it like this, that they look like a first year students. They move in clusters. They move in a group. Whereas recurrent aphthous will be one on the lip, one on the tongue, one on the cheek, like that. So they are discrete. They are separate. They are like together. And then on the lip, you get typical lesion that is called as a recurrent herpes labialis. That is called as fever blister, or the common cold sore or something, because here there is a cluster of vesicles will appear on the lip, then they will weep, those vesicles will rupture, they will weep serum, crustacean will be formed. Now the point to remember is that the dentist, when we used to use treat patients without wearing gloves many years back. That was in 70s, 80s, and 80s, 90s. So there were chances that you may get herpetic whitlow if patient has got herpes. Also, if you are using the aerosol like ultrasonic scaler or air rotor handpiece, then because of that aerosol, you will get herpetic infection. So you have to be very careful if herpes, recurrent herpes labialis is there. So you give local application of acyclovir to the patient and let it, you start dentistry. So this is about the herpes recurrent lesion. Pemphigus, as I told you,
so the one condition is contagious and one is non-contagious in the earlier slide, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the recurrent abscess is not contagious, but the recurrent, especially recurrent herpes labialis, because it is outside, no. So while retracting the cheek or while examining the patient, you may inadvertently touch that lesion, and then you may get in the infection in the nail bed, that is herpetic vitilo, or while doing the scaling or something, because of the spray, it may go into your eye, your nose. Of course, now we are taking so much care that nothing can go wrong, but still, it's a part we must teach this particular, that this is going to be little dangerous. Means it is communicable.
And also, sir, means we need to differentiate, because one, in cases of abscess, the main line of treatment will be your steroids, and in a herpes lesion, the steroids should be are contraindicated. That is the one thing. Yeah.
So because in herpes, if you give steroid, then it will become fulminating infection will result. The infection, and we want the body to develop antibodies. So antibodies formation is suppressed by steroids, and infection will become worse. It may go to the brain and all that. So in herpetic lesions, steroids are contraindicated, and erythema multiforme, abscess, etc. Steroids is a drug of choice. So that we have to remember. That is why we must differentiate also. Correct. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So this is pemphigus vulgaris, where there is a bullous lesion is formed, and it is more common in the older age group, age more than 40, 50, like that. And the bullous lesion will form, it will rupture, and that is very dangerous condition. In the past, it was considered as a fatal, because in the skin also patient will develop. And when the steroids were not given, because of the infection through the skin, or because of the loss of electrolytes from the skin, dehydration, etc., patients used to die. But now with the steroids, these conditions have become little curable, and it is not that dangerous. So this is pemphigus. In the same patient, you can see how much is the extent of the. This is a very severe type of a pemphigus, where there is not a little area of normal mucosa seen. Everything is eroded. So this is something like a Nikolsky sign. Nikolsky sign means normal mucosa you take and you rub it, and the bullous lesion will appear. Here, the PG student tried to lift it up with the tweezer, and you can see that the superficial mucosa can be peeled off. So that is typical of a practice because of acantholysis. Above the basement membrane, you find that there is a lysis of the cells takes place, and therefore superficial area can be lifted. Superficial that is called as a acantholysis or Nikolsky sign. Okay. So the steroids in our subject, as like dermatology, the steroids are used like water. Everybody is giving so much of steroid. How to give it? How dangerous it is? Quite dangerous, and you have to be very careful. Either you can give prednisolone, betamethasone, triamcinolone, acetonide, clobetasol. But before giving steroid, we must rule out the acidity. If you give steroid tablet, then the patient is having acidity, patient will develop peptic ulcer. If he has got peptic ulcer, it will perforate. If patient has got diabetes mellitus, it will give rise to hyperglycemia. If it has got hypertension, it will increase the hypertension. If he has got COX, it will become worse. So there are a lot of side effects. Then it gives rise to osteoporosis. So therefore, you have to avoid giving. You have to think before starting with steroids. What we nowadays are doing is that if patient gives history of acidity and diabetes mellitus, etc., we don't give it by mouth. Not to give it by parenteral administration. Not giving it by not to swallow, but to swish and spit. You keep the tablet in the mouth, the betamethasone tablet in the mouth, saliva will form, let it touch there, and then spit out, not to swallow. If it doesn't swallow, then the effect on the systemic effects are sort of minimized. So that is why we give the steroids by not to swallow, but to swish and spit. So that way we can give. Okay, now for the audience, what this condition is. If you look at the gingiva, you find that the interdental papillae are punched out, and there is all slough present, pseudomembrane present, lots of deposit. You see the interdental papilla are punched out necrotic ulcerations of the interdental papilla. So what is condition? This is acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivostomatitis. And the most important point about ANAG is that it is a very severely painful. Some the patient gives history of fever and lymphadenopathy. He gets, if you touch here, patient will get pain. He gets fever, and the gingiva becomes extremely painful, and then patient cannot tolerate the food. So this is typical of ANAG. And you give amoxicillin. First we used to give penicillin. phenoxymethyl penicillin, you can give amoxicillin 250 milligram or 500 milligram, and then twice a day. And then we give flagyl. Flagyl is a trade name. You can give metronidazole. Metronidazole 400 milligram 3 times a day. That works like magic. And you give H2O2 mouthwash, hydrogen peroxide mouthwash. You can just write hydrogen peroxide mouthwash IP. IP means Indian Pharmacopoeia, so that good quality you will get. Or you write Amosan or Piosan mouthwash that contains perborate, that contains hydrogen peroxide. Why hydrogen peroxide? Because anak is caused by Borrelia vincenti, and so these are Borrelia vincenti and Physiformis dentium. These are what are called as organisms. They don't survive in the presence of oxygen, and therefore if you give H2O2 mouthwash, they will be killed. So that is why you give H2O2 mouthwash. And H2O2 mouthwash also gives rise to effervescence. Because of the effervescence, all the debris is removed, and because of H2O2 mouthwash, the bleeding will be there. These patients will complain of bleeding. That also is taken care of. So that is the treatment for the anak.
And sir, also we should avoid scaling. Is it like that? I've heard means we should initial days of anak, the scaling should be avoided as it causes the bacteremia.
Yeah, I agreed. So in the first few stages, first few days, the patient will not allow us to touch also. That means if we touch, the patient gets so much pain now that you can't do anything. So what we can do is we take a syringe and mix it with H2O2 little diluted, and then irrigate that area. And with the water only you irrigate. And then with that, the infection will come under control, and by then the metronidazole and amoxicillin will start taking its action. And once now patient is comfortable, in the second, third visit, you can do little scaling. And once you remove the calculus, it improves. And suddenly you find that it becomes quite as good as normal. So this is what post-operatively we found that good result. And once you control that bacterial phase, then in the scaling and all that, it will definitely improve. So but first he will not allow you to scale, will not allow you to touch only. So that is the problem. So irrigate with the H2O2 with the syringe, and then it will give a better result. So if you look at this ulcer, I will not blame you if you suspect that it is malignant, because it is looking so rolled out and all that. But whenever you see an ulcer, try to look at the surrounding area. So this is a single ulcer, long-standing ulcer, not healing. But when you look at the teeth were having sharpness. You can see here the tooth was fractured. Here the tooth was fractured, and this sharp edge was jutting into that ulcer. And therefore, this is a sharp tooth, and that is the ulcer. And so ulcer was when the patient's tongue was at rest, it was against that particular area, and therefore this tooth ulcer developed. So after you grind this tooth or do root canal and give a crown, or somehow remove the irritation caused by this fractured cusp, and healing takes place, that means it's a traumatic ulcer and there's nothing to worry about. But if it doesn't disappear within 10-15 days, then you start suspecting that it may be something else. So this was a case of a traumatic ulcer. So anyway, now for the students, if they are attending, what this could be. This looks like a suspicious lesion. So what is the first question you ask this patient? He is edentulous. So you ask the patient whether he is wearing a denture and whether the denture has become loose. So the patient is wearing a denture and it has become loose, and the margin of that denture is going into that depression which is there, that is called as the epulis fissuratum or denture granuloma. So this is a typical condition. What happens is, as the patient keeps on wearing the denture for a longer time and he keeps on biting from the front of the mouth, then the anterior ridge becomes resorbed, and the denture sinks inside. The ridge becomes smaller and denture sinks inside, and the periphery starts biting into the sulcus, and it gives rise to irritation like this. But it looks quite a rolled out margin and looks dangerous, but actually it is epulis fissuratum. Sometimes, we used to tell the patient that now you don't wear the denture, let it heal, because we also feel worried that if this turns malignant, then the dentist will be blamed for it. So we used to say, don't wear it, don't. But old patients will not listen to you, Then what we started doing in GDC was that we'll remove the denture and keep it in the department, and with his name and all that very properly saved, so that he will not lose the denture. So then he called the patient again, and ideally we make a new denture. with a new impression. When after you will be surprised that after the 15-20 days, no, this particular depression will go away and normal healing will take place. So after that happens, then you take a fresh impression with relief in that area and then give a new denture. So that is what is the ideal method to treat this.
Sir, any management for this during the denture is out? Do you give anything to the patient while at home?
So we can give we used to give this glycerin tannic acid local application, and if it is ulcerated and all that, then for first few days we give vitamin A chewable so that the mucosal epithelialization will take place nicely, and otherwise we give glycerin tannic acid. And sometimes we even some people would, if they are in a hurry, then they may do surgically remove the margins which are overhanging and give a smooth surface to that denture bearing area and make a new denture. So that way also we had done. But glycerin tannic acid is good enough. We used to call it as Gumex Gumpent. So even after complete denture extraction, complete total extraction, we used to prescribe some Gumpent so that the mucosa becomes a little tough. So that is what, and keratinized. So that is what we used to give. So tuberculous ulcer and malignant ulcer. Tuberculous ulcer they say that it is supposed to have undermined edges, and patient will give history of tuberculosis. So when he coughs violently, the tongue may get traumatized, and then the mucosa, the sputum which is there, that has got organisms, they get implanted inside the ulcer and they give rise to that more infection, and that is a tuberculous ulcer. So unless you treat tuberculosis, this is not going to go. And malignant ulcer also, of course, is a very dangerous one. So this we are doing, in fact, traumatic ulcer, then denture granuloma, then tuberculous ulcer, malignant, these are single ulcers. So if single ulcer is there, this will be the differential diagnosis. So malignant ulcer, if you look at it, it looks dangerous. So Dr. Sarvera used to say that malignant ulcer stares at you. That you can, as soon as you see it, you know that this is nothing normal. This is something very unusually abnormal. So, and then patient will give history of tobacco, etc. So of course, this patient doesn't seem to have. But nowadays, I have observed that female patients with no habit and very nice oral hygiene, and you can't suspect also that person can have malignancy, have developed malignancy, especially on the lateral border of the tongue. I don't know what is the cause. They say that we believe that it is because of the viral, papilloma virus. So it may be the human papilloma, HPV. HPV may be the cause, and it is very common. So even if you see some suspicious ulcer in a patient without habit, you need not conclude that it is not malignant. So you have to wait and watch. At least 15-20 days you treat the patient with vitamin A and antifungal agents and wait and watch. If it is improving, good. Otherwise, consider biopsy. Especially tongue, you should be very careful.
Sir, but suppose a patient with ulcer comes and we are treating him. So how much time we are supposed to ideally wait for treating on your own, or whether to decide whether you have to refer it to a higher center or to some oral medicine specialist or an oral surgeon for the biopsy?
So I think maximum we can wait for 15 days, not more
So
than
within 15 days or 3 weeks, it has to heal any ulcer, a normal ulcer.
Yeah, and if not healing, at least it should start improving. So nowadays everybody has got the mobile camera, so they can take a photograph on the day of when they present, and after 10 days again take another photograph, and third after 15 days. And if there is there is improvement in that, then it's okay. But if there is no improvement, better not to wait. Better to refer it to the higher center. So that is the best thing. And also palpate for the lymph nodes. If tongue is involved or any floor of the mouth involved, look for the lymph nodes. If lymph nodes are palpable, all the more reason to suspect that there may be something wrong.
Okay.
So the malignancies that you have
so follow up is must. Follow up is must in such cases.
Yes, sir. Yes. Follow. Now this we come to the white lesions. So there is something called a pseudomembranous candidiasis, which was called as thrush. You can see curd-like deposits, and there are multiple predisposing factors: old age, very old, very young, and very sick. These people will get it. Diabetes mellitus, history of radiotherapy, history of mouthwashes, and antibiotic sore mouth. All these are the causes of pseudomembranous candidiasis. This patient, and it is to be treated with these drugs, clotrimazole, ketoconazole, etc. And I'll just show you one case, which the same case, that this patient coming with this type of a picture, very severe type of a, this candidiasis may be red and white. There may be erythematous candidiasis with pseudomembrane, and there is white dots are seen. They are called as thrush because there are white dots on the that bird which I showed you. There are white dots on the chest. It resembles that. So curd-like deposits. So patient had taken some antibiotics for a long time and he developed this. So we treated the patient with fluconazole 100 milligram. On the first day we give 2 tablets, one in the morning and one in the night. And the next 5 days we give one tablet only. So like that we give for 5 days or 10 days. And after 10 days, the patient improved like this. So it is a very effective drug, that fluconazole or ketoconazole 200 milligram, fluconazole 100 milligram or 150 also is available. So this we can give. So that is a good one. And you can give candid mouth paint also. But it is such a severe condition, only mouth paint will not be systemic only. Yeah. Now there is one interesting lesion called as tobacco pouch keratosis. That people will make a tobacco quid and they will put the tobacco in the buccal sulcus and then they forget about it. They may sleep also, but they develop that is called as the tobacco pouch keratosis. You can see it almost looks like a leukoplakia and the stains of the tobacco are there. But if the patient gives up the habit and if you give vitamin A, chewable and antifungal, the lesion will heal also. So that is tobacco pouch keratosis is still reversible. But once it becomes leukoplakia, then you have to treat it and then only, or you have to biopsy it, only then it will improve. So this is tobacco pouch keratosis. Okay. Now this is typical appearance of a homogeneous leukoplakia. If you see leukoplakia from close, very closely, you will see some fissures on top. There are some fissures. So this is called as a cracked mud appearance. So this is after rainy season, if the mud is there and then there is sun, then it will develop cracks. And this is called as a cracked mud appearance of homogeneous leukoplakia. Typically seen in smokers who let out the smoke from the commissure. Those who are letting out the smoke from the commissure, then they will get this tobacco-induced homogeneous leukoplakia. Homogeneous leukoplakia is not as dangerous as the speckled leukoplakia, but the homogeneous is looks like that. Now, suppose those patients who are keeping feed in the oral cavity in one particular area, 3 things you will notice. One is stain is more in that area, more stains on the teeth. Second thing is gingival recession is there. Gingival recession is more in that area than the other areas. And white lesion. So white lesion, more stains and gingival recession. That is typical of keeping a tobacco quid. And if you look at that leukoplakia, it is densely white and it is not having a red area and it is non-scrapable. And it is like a patch. But whereas lichen planus, if you look at this lesion lichen planus, you can see peripherally there are flame-shaped processes. There are flame-shaped dendritic processes, and that is typical. It has got some sort of a architectural design to it. So that is called a lichen. Lichen means the fungi or algae which are there, they leave a pattern on the stone. So that is a lichen planus. Leukoplakia, speckled leukoplakia is there. That looks, if a combination of red and white is there, it is more dangerous because the red area is deprived of the covering of the keratinization. So the basal cell layer is exposed comes closer to the surface. So the basal cell layer is multiplying more often. So there, if the carcinogen acts, then more likely that malignancy will develop. So that is speckled leukoplakia. It is to be stained with toluidine blue. If toluidine blue is a basic dye and the cells which are multiplying has got more DNA, so it takes up the dye. So you can select the site for biopsy after doing the toluidine blue test. So to select the site for biopsy, you can do the toluidine blue set. You can see that he has got a heavy smoking habit. So much stains are there. So leukoplakia patient, either it is homogeneous or speckled. If homogeneous, give vitamin A and antifungal. If improvement, continue the treatment. If no improvement, consider biopsy. If speckled is there, then first think of biopsy. Then if there is dysplasia, refer to oncologist. If no dysplasia, vitamin A and antifungal. If no improvement, consider surgical opinion. Now, of course, I have not written about this laser surgery also can be undertaken in these cases.
So why antifungals are recommended in that cases?
It has been found that anything which disturbs the mucosa and it changes in the covering of the mucosa, there the candida will start growing. And once the candida grows, the candida sends a pseudo hyphae in the outer 1/3 of the epithelium. And once that pseudo hyphae are sent, unless that candida is treated, that white lesion will not disappear. So once you give antifungal agents, the white lesions will disappear. So that is a typical of therefore it is useful. So always give vitamin A chewable, that is available as vitamin A chewable, and Candid mouth paint is a clotrimazole mouth paint that you give. So with that, there is good improvement. So if you see this condition, it is a white lesion, but unlike leukoplakia, it is not like a patch, but it has got this flame-shaped processes. So this and red area in the center. So this is called an erosive lichen planus. You can see red area in the center, and within that there is a pseudomembrane form, or there is a deeper ulcer. So this is typical of a erosive lichen planus. So erosive lichen planus is very, very common, and now it is becoming. They say that it is associated with stress. So maybe because of the stress is more, we are seeing more of erosive lichen planus, and these patients are hyper-conscious. They feel worried that they develop cancorophobia. Of course, about 6% of the leukoplakia can turn into cancer, and more of submucous fibrosis, but less of lichen planus. Less lichen planus will 0.2%, 2 in 1,000. And if more so, if the patient has habit also, if he has a smoking habit, then chances that he may develop malignancy. But lichen planus less likely to develop into malignancy. This we treated in one study carried out, clobetasol ointment. Actually, clobetasol is just like this Kenacort is there, which is a triamcinolone acetonide Kenacort or test. They develop for the oral cavity. So clobetasol people also should develop for the oral cavity, then it will become simple. Otherwise, the patient buys the Tenovate tube and he says for external application only and he doesn't use. So we specifically tell the patient, you apply it. And what we used to do is in certain areas we take a denture adhesive paste, powder paste, denture Fixon paste, mix it with the clobetasol and apply. So that stays there for longer time and better effect. So that is what we did. So this I have already covered, that rule out diabetes mellitus, hypertension, etc. Lichen planus treatment, there are so many treatments available. And remember that if any condition has got more than 4 or 5 treatments, then none of them is actually effective. We have not understood how to treat this condition. So, but still, we have to manage this patient because they keep on suffering, and we must really at least minimize their suffering, if not totally cure. Because not, and first thing you do is tell the patient that it is not fully curable. It will keep on troubling him. So that you have to tell the patient. And patient also has got skin lesions in lichen planus. This is one interesting lesion called as lichenoid reaction, that silver filling the cheek mucosa develops this, and after this patient's silver filling was removed and they gave glass ionomer or zinc oxide or something, the lesion disappeared. So that is just a reaction. So that is called as lichenoid reaction. If patient has burning sensation,